FBI criminal investigations often take many unexpected twists and turns, and many of these FBI cases result in the need for more criminal profiles to be created before the culprit in a crime can be caught. There are, however, many true crime stories of FBI files that remain unsolved, and only time will tell if those fugitives will ever be brought to justice. Number 5. In August of 1949, Canadian Issei Bussolel became the subject of an FBI criminal investigation when his girlfriend was found deceased in a ditch in Michigan, and he was immediately considered to be the logical suspect. Bussolel's car was seen by witnesses as he fled the scene of the crime, and following an investigation by the FBI, he was placed on their most wanted list on the 3rd of March, 1952. But they would soon discover that he was a hard man to track. His car was later found in Boston, Massachusetts, and he would continue to evade capture for the next 4 years, until suspicious behavior was reported at a woman's restroom in North Avenue Beach in California. When investigators arrived at the scene, they found that the person in question was a woman who was dressed in a black satin bathing suit, a blue blouse, and a green skirt. A female officer conducted a body search, but she quickly summoned a male officer when it became clear that the woman was, in fact, a man. And that man turned out to be Bussolel, who had used a not-so-subtle disguise in an attempt to blend in with the crowd. He was taken into custody, and after his fingerprints were taken, it was revealed that he was one of the fugitives on the FBI's 10 most wanted lists. He had also racked up a lengthy arrest record, and in September of 1953, he was deported back to Canada after being charged with violating immigration laws. He received a sentence of 5 years probation for unlawful entry into the United States. 1 month later, he appeared in court for crimes that he had committed earlier, and he was sentenced to 5 to 10 years for attempted robbery, as well as 1 to 3 years for escape and parole violations. Number 4. Ruth Eisman Scheer was the first woman to ever appear on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, and she would go on to evade the authorities for 79 days before she was finally captured. On the 17th of December, 1968, 20-year-old Barbara Mackel had contracted Hong Kong flu. She was staying at the Roadway Inn in Decatur, Georgia, and her mother had traveled there to take care of her, and they planned to travel back to Coral Gables in Florida, where they would be spending Christmas with the rest of the family. But on that day, they heard a knock at the door, and a man wearing a policeman's hat told Barbara that her close friend Stuart Hunt had been in a car accident. Shocked by the news, Barbara invited him in, and he was followed by a woman named Ruth Eisman Scheer. The two tied Barbara's mother up and forced Barbara to get in the back of their car. They then drove to a remote pine stand in Gwinnett County, where they buried Barbara in a trench after placing her in a box that was reinforced with fiberglass. It also had an air pump, a battery-powered lamp, water, and food that would allow her to survive. Barbara's father, a wealthy land developer, soon received a ransom demand of $500,000, and he agreed to pay, but the first attempt at a drop-off was aborted when 2 police officers happened to stop by, causing the kidnappers to flee on foot. Shortly after, their car was discovered abandoned, and inside, investigators found photographs of a man wearing a policeman's hat, as well as a car registration under the name of George Deacon. A second drop was arranged and successfully completed, but the kidnappers failed to make contact to arrange for Barbara's release. George Deacon was eventually tracked down at the University of Miami, where he built ventilation boxes. Deacon's boss told investigators that he spent time with Eisman Scheer, as she also worked at the university. A man from Georgia contacted the FBI and informed them that he had discovered strange paperwork in a trailer that he had bought from a man. FBI agents found that they were letters that were addressed to George Deacon and Gary Christ, who had escaped from a prison in California. Prints found on the car revealed that Deacon and Christ were in fact the same person. On the 20th of December, Chris contacted the FBI and gave vague directions to where Barbara was being kept. 100 FBI special agents scoured the area, and Barbara was rescued unharmed 3 days after being underground. Chris was found hiding in a swamp in Florida, while Eisman Shear was tracked to Norman, Oklahoma. She was found guilty of kidnapping and sentenced to 7 years behind bars. Chris would receive a life sentence but would be paroled after 10 years. Number 3. Johnny Madison Williams Jr. is considered to be one of the most successful bank robbers in the history of America, and during the FBI's criminal investigation into his case, he became known as the Shootist. This came about because he used the ploy of firing his firearm into the air while committing bank robberies so that employees would avoid eye contact with him. This meant that investigators found it hard to get a description of him. He further induced fear into his victims by constantly yelling and cursing while committing the robberies, causing employees to be more cooperative. Added to this was the fact that he meticulously planned each robbery for weeks, and sometimes years at a time, keeping a log of each completed robbery. During some of his robberies, he would escape through bushes, concealing his passage with foliage as he fled. A spokesman for the San Jose Police Department described him as the most calculating bank robber of the second half of the 20th century. Williams and his wife Carolyn continued to rob banks for the next 8 years, and while doing so, they lived a seemingly normal life, with Williams taking up bowling and winning one tournament which had a cash prize of $1,200. Much of the money that they stole was squandered away in casinos, specifically at craps tables and slot machines. The couple was ultimately arrested at a motel in Seattle after an anonymous tip came in after the airing of a San Diego news program. The FBI would, however, not disclose how the show aided in the arrest, and they remained tight-lipped about the log that Williams kept. It was revealed that Carolyn served as a getaway driver, while Williams hid in the trunk of the car after each robbery. After their arrest, Williams was sentenced to 92 years in prison for 27 of the 56 robberies that he had committed, since the other 29 fell outside of the statute of limitations. Carolyn received a sentence of 20 years behind bars. Williams was eventually released after serving 26 years of his sentence. Number 2. The true crime story of Thomas Capano started in 1994 while he was a partner at the Wilmington branch of the Saul Ewing LLP law firm. During this time, he started a relationship with a 28-year-old woman named Anne-Marie Fahy, who worked as the appointment secretary to Tom Carpenter, the governor at the time. Capano was, however, married, and the following year he separated from his wife, Kay. That same year, Anne started a relationship with Michael Scanlon while still involved with Capano, causing them to have several heated arguments, and soon after, she mysteriously disappeared. She was last seen on the 27th of June, 1996, while having dinner with Capano in Philadelphia. Her family reported her as missing on the 30th of June, and after an extensive search proved fruitless, the FBI joined the investigation. Capano was immediately considered to be the prime suspect in Anne's disappearance, and in November of 1997, he was arrested, 16 months after she had gone missing. Anne was never found, though, and prosecutors alleged that Capano had ended Anne's life at his house, and together with his brother Gary, disposed of her body in the Atlantic Ocean. It was discovered that Gary's boat had been sold with 2 anchors missing. When he was interviewed, he told investigators that Capano had borrowed his boat and admitted to him that he had ended someone's life. Gary and Capano then sailed 62 miles out to sea, where they disposed of the body using the anchors as weights. He also aided Capano in disposing of a sofa and a carpet that contained Anne's biological material. They were thrown into a dumpster, which was managed by the other brother, Louis, who emptied the dumpster. Capano's trial lasted 12 weeks and was highly publicized, and on the 17th of January, 1999, he was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to be executed, but in February of 2006, this decision was overturned and replaced with a life sentence in prison, without the possibility of parole. He passed away in prison in 2011 after suffering a heart attack, resulting in a bitter court fight between his remaining brothers over the multi-million-dollar real estate empire owned by the Capano family. Number 1. Before the FBI case into the disappearance of Martha Doe Roberts started, she lived on a 150-acre farm in Eads, Tennessee, with her husband, Alan. Martha worked as a bookkeeper at her church and was a well-liked member of her community. On the 17th of August, 1992, Alan received a call from a man named Sam Wagner, who was interested in buying a property that he was selling. He asked Alan to show him around the property, and Alan left the house to do so. But the prospective buyer never showed up, and when Alan returned to the house, Martha was nowhere to be found. He found that the garage door was open with her car still parked inside. When he noticed that her inhaler was still in the house, he became concerned and he contacted their friends and neighbors, but no one had seen her. Later that evening, he received a call from a man who said that he was keeping Martha for $100,000 ransom, and if Alan failed to pay, her life would be ended. He failed to specify a drop point, however, and Alan contacted the police. Soon, the kidnapper started contacting more of Martha's friends and family, demanding more ransom money, and proving that she was still alive by answering questions to which only she knew the answers. He also contacted a local TV station, informing them of the kidnapping. A drop-off point was eventually agreed upon, but the kidnapper failed to show up. In 1993, Martha's family decided to conduct their own investigation after her nephews stated that they suspected a man named Charles Lord. They gave the kidnapper an unlisted number to keep their communications hidden from investigators. A new drop-off point was decided by the nephews, who told the kidnapper that they would be there with their mother. The nephews waited at the spot, and when Lord arrived, he claimed that he also wanted to catch the kidnapper, but when he asked why their mother wasn't there, they knew that he was guilty. They confronted him, but he fled the scene on foot. Martha's nephews immediately notified the FBI about the incident, and he was brought in for questioning. He gave conflicting stories about his movements that day, but eventually confessed to ending her life. He led investigators to his backyard where he had buried Martha, and he was sentenced to life in prison with an additional 20 years tacked on. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.